let us begin. Well, good evening, the assembled company, wherever you are, and wherever you are watching, whether you are on YouTube, Facebook, or even here at the cafe. If you want to come into the room and live, just go to the cafe and just press today's stories, and then press the join button, and you'll come in and see us. But if not, you can just pretend you're an audience in the dark, in the back, at the back, up on the pyramid stage, up by the tree, right up the back where the television cameras aren't going to reach you. And so normally at the cafe, everyone's telling traditional stories, but stories aren't just traditional stories. They're stories of what's important to us, what's happened to us in our lives. And sometimes when we're missing something, everyone sits down and says, do you remember when we were blah, 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 blah. And we're going to have a lot of that tonight. And we'll have some songs. And I probably went to my first festival now. Well, I kept telling, it was years ago, and I kept telling Chris that it was my 50 years of festivals. So it would have been 4 years. So I've been doing festivals for about 54 years of different sorts. The first festivals I went to, and probably Tarby's been doing it longer than me, but but the first festivals I went to were jazz festivals, and my first festival was Richmond Jazz Festival, and I kind of I remember the thing I most remember about it was and it's just like now, there was a ludicrous mixture of musics. There was the Yardbirds and the remains of Ted Heath's big band on at the same stage. Just that was brilliant. And something that they did there, because of course Richmond's in a town, and all it was, you know, the early days of people complaining about festival goers, and people were sleeping in people's front gardens. And I only found out this later. All I knew at the time was there was this beautiful marquee that everyone just crashed in and opened up their sleeping bags and slept in this one marquee. And it was only years later, when I was doing some research and finding out about it, that this marquee had actually been put up specially for people to kip in, because no one bothered to take a tent in those days. You just put a sleeping roll on, and it was actually put up to stop people sleeping in the residents of Richmond's front gardens, which I thought was a brilliant idea. And no one told us; we just crashed in it. And but then I suppose, you know, and then the literature festivals and everything else, and then I suddenly, mainly because I used to call in at Tarby's on the Odd Folk Festival, of course, Cambridge Folk Festival, but I was living in Ipswich at the time, and between Edinburgh or Cambridge and wherever I was coming from was a cottage in Wetherden, and Tarby, who had in fact years and years before had moved me to in 1966. Had moved me in a minivan down to my first flat in London. But I reconnected with her because she was doing furniture and all sorts of things at the time, and I used to call in on the way back for a cup of tea, and she said, "You ought to come to these fairs." And I kind of knew a bit about the fairs, but I didn't know much. And then I entered this weird world of alternative East Anglia, and I'm sure, Tarby, you have the odd moment that stands out through those years. Well, how did you start with the fairs? What brought you into them?
I started, I think, when I went to Bungay Horse Fair. We had a stall at Barsham for selling food, and that was when it all started, really. I just moved down here, can't remember when, and bought this wreck of a house, and Yes, and that's when it started. And I got really interested, but I didn't. I thought each fair ought to change and be something different. And we were at a meeting, and somebody said, "Right, well then you do it and change it." So that's what I did.
Well, that was, and well, of course, you know, I mean, there were some magnificent changes, and sort of, what were the what? Give me a couple of moments that stuck out.
I remember one that stuck out was when we burnt the stage down at Oaksmere, the outside stage. Well, we didn't, but Roro Zoo were on it doing an act, and I suddenly saw the stage going up, and I had to get them off quickly before they got burnt. That was one. Another one was Neil Innes was playing, and suddenly everything went. All the electricity and everything. He was completely in the dark, and there was a tent. The tent was packed, and I didn't know what to do really. But anyway, somebody sorted it. Thank God.
as they did,
Yeah, they did.
And later on, towards the end of the fairs, I remember you trying one Rougham, and some of the convoy were there, and they wouldn't leave. Well, you were trying to persuade them to leave, and I remember you going from bus to bus to bus, and then you came back and said they'll leave if I mean, I'm paraphrasing, but they needed another field to go to where they could they could make some diesel money to get to Holland or something.
That's it.
Yeah.
And I found one in Harwich.
Yeah, I found it was Tony Rose's, and he was an old boy who lived in Harwich, and we'd run a Rock Against Racism one day there in the past, and his farm was next to the golf course, and he hated the golf course, and he would do anything to annoy the golf course. So I got someone to get hold of him and said, Tony, do you want the convoy to come down? They'll really annoy the golf course, and you persuaded them to leave then, but it was and of course, I mean, amongst the great things that you did was the kids stuff. You know, Oaksmere Kids Fair.
True.
So, do you want to tell us a bit about how, you know, why you started that, or?
But I suppose it because I had about 3 kids or 4 kids by then, and I can't remember how many. I can't even remember when it was. But I got on very well with the people at Oaksmere who owned it then, and they said that I could do it if I wanted to. So that's when we started the kids' fairs, and they were really good. Well,
Good. You put on Musical Youth just before they broke as well. I remember.
Yeah.
And
yes, I didn't even know that they were going to go to the top that week, but we'd heard them and thought they were really good. So I asked them if they'd come and play. And I think there was something ridiculous like 300 quid, which was quite a lot of money, but not. And I don't know what they'd be asking later. Not a clue. Thousands.
Then of course you moved the whole thing to Thornham, and
yeah.
And then you, even after the fairs finished, you were doing Halloween up there.
Yeah, I did Halloween for years, and I did Halloween at Oaksmere as well.
Yeah. I kind of remember we had some local, quite large gentlemen turned up and wanted to do something to one of the food stalls or something, and we had a gentleman by the name of Rock, a friend of mine, who used to do a bit of security, and Rock Rock built a fire between the two
That's right.
the two
Yeah,
warring camps, if you like, and said, "Yeah, I don't mind you getting to each other, but you're going to have to come through me first, I believe."
I remember that. That was really funny. Well, it wasn't funny. Good.
Yeah, and then of course, when it all finished, you instead of letting it drop, you insisted on us all working forever, and bless you, and and so you moved the performers into council run events and all sorts of stuff all around the country,
Correct.
and
Yeah. There were some good people, and somebody from Ipswich approached me. And I remember having to go down to a meeting in the town hall, I think, and had to go up to the top floor. Can't remember where it was. And they asked me if I'd do a festival for them. So I said, yes, that's okay, but I was really terrified. It did work, thank God. I think it worked.
yeah, and so that and from that there was Needham Lakes, there was which was a regular one for a long time, and then you got really you were getting some really prestigious stuff, like the Millennium, all the side acts on the Millennium Dome and the Harry Potter launch up at Edinburgh Castle and stuff like that. There was
True. Seems so long ago.
Yeah. Well, yeah, you say so long ago, Tar, but when did you actually really retire?
Sorry?
1 year? 6 months ago?
She hasn't stopped yet, John.
Yeah, but we don't want to make that public. Yeah, I know. Yeah, Sarah, you're in the background. Come in the picture a second. You grew up with this ludicrous mother who led you astray into the world of fairs and festivals.
Yeah, what a privilege that was.
Yeah, so I mean, and you're still at it, and and of course I've missed out. The sort of crowning, almost the pinnacle of all this. It's like, because everything sort of just built on each other, and of course for the last few years there's been, got 20 years, I don't know, my memories. The years start melting into each other, but then Weird and Wonderful Wood. So how did that happen?
Well, because I suppose all my life I'd been stripping pine furniture. Sorry, get rid of the hand. And I decided that it would be really good to have something to do with, and I'd run the craft centre as well in London before we moved down here. I decided it would be really good to have something involving the crafts, wood, and I just something a bit different.
So nearly everything you've done is because you fancied it. Well, I think that's a good idea. I think I'll make it happen.
Well, it's putting the passion into something, isn't it? If you're doing something you love and that you're really passionate about, then it's going to come together. And I think that's what Mum's always done. It's always about the people and the art and it's not about making vast amounts of money. It's always been about people and art and performers and stories and music, and and bringing all of that together is a skill that Mum has tenfold.
Absolutely. And there was points when and I have to say, it's on behalf of every performer that might have been around, that there were points. It was a bit like now, where the arts were really under threat, and if it wasn't for people like Tarby, a lot of us would have just we'd have had no work and nothing. I mean, that was just So can I have a mass round of applause? I know that she gets embarrassed by stuff like this, but I'd like a mass round of applause. And you know, and if you know, I mean, because what would people like? And unmute yourself, sister. Unmute yourself. Come on. Thank you.
Yes,
What would now, Sister Sledge? What would people like you have done without people like Tarby?
I wouldn't have been able to have a fag round the back of the bicycle stands if it hadn't been for Tarby. Because she likes a fag. And, of course, I wouldn't have been able to do that with her. I certainly wouldn't have been able to rumple around the woods looking for lepers to bless if it wasn't for Tarby. You know, I mean, honestly, you know, there was no kind of, what I loved about Tarb was like, she just saw something and she thought, well, let's try that. You know, there was a really strict, strong curatorial sense of how a gig would work. So she had all of that, but she was absolutely happy to take risks on people that she didn't know. She didn't just have her favourites. She, you know, I always, whenever we're putting sort of events together in the nunnery, we always make sure that we're feeding the project. And you know, Tom, you've always understood that. You've always understood what does the project need, not, you know, who are my mates and how much am I going to get paid. So I think that's always been really, really important. And also just that, you know, she always surprises twice. Yes, it was working. And then whatever happens, stop for a fag.
well,
And
thank you all. There's don't go away, Tarby and Sarah, because we'll probably come back and harass you again, because we you know you're not allowed to relax until after the whole thing's over, you know, and then you can go back to the cottage and just probably with 1,000 people following you, you know. I mean, there's the New Year's at Weatherden Village Hall, you know, there was always, you know, it was like, you know, she worked her socks off, Tarby worked her socks off, and the rest of us enjoyed the results of her efforts, you know. And there's been you've had some amazing performers through, you know, people like Paco and you know, I mean, just so many, you know. Is there anyone who really stands out that thinks, you know, and you won't offend anyone else if you just say who stands out?
John, was that New Year's Eve party you took us to at the village hall many moons ago? Was that the one that Tarby?
That was one of Tarby's, yes.
Yeah, okay, yeah. We had such a good time there. That was one of the most enjoyable New Year's I'd had since I left the old country, and listening to the church bells ring in the New Year out in the cold out there. It was such a lovely time.
Good, thank you.
Yeah.
I think the one that I remember most is Richard and Linda Thompson, when they played at the village hall. And I remember they turned up and they got turned away by the kids, my kids at the door, because they didn't know who they were.
They said, but we're performers, and at 10 I said, yeah, everyone says that, you have to pay or go.
Quite right too, Sarah. Yeah. Well, of course, that's where you came from, you know. I mean, when on the first gigs you put on was because there wasn't any music that you wanted to listen to around, so you just thought, oh, I'll bring up Fairport.
Yeah.
So where was that? That was Bury Town Hall or something, wasn't it?
Bury Corn Exchange, yes.
Yeah, and Sarah was a mere mite at that point.
I remember very well, though. I remember the queue of people trailing through the town all the way round, down past the Abbey Gates and up around to the bus station. I mean, the queues were ridiculous, people trying to get in, and you know, it would have sold out 4 times over, I think. It was a phenomenal event. And of course, John Peel was comparing, and I remember that very well, being ushered away from an argument between him and Sid Vicious in the hotel afterwards. Do you remember that, Mum?
So,
Yeah.
So we'll go. We'll yeah. I could do a whole we'll do a whole program on you, but we'll drop it on you really without much notice, so we don't, or else you'll say I'm retired. and there's,
Yeah, definitely.
but for now, I want to. So that's kind of that's almost a legacy, isn't it? That we and then in the midst of my festival lunacy, I mean, first of all about the fairs, but then I was, and then Hackney Free Festival, and well, I believe he was running the Blaggers stage, and there was I probably went to there was a sort of squat in this semicircle. I know I went around there. I probably bumped into Chris there, probably living there at the time. And then down at Brighton Free Festival, it's his early 90s, and that was that was sort of like a bit like Hackney Free on Sea. Chris sort of, it's about 2 o'clock in the morning. Chris said, I think what I'm going to start is this sort of like an agency, but I want to market the British festival scene across the world. I think I'm going to call it Continental Drifts, and from that, I mean, I've done some amazing work for him as well. I mean, my favourite one for him was a little one, was the Lord Mayor's festival. I don't know what it was called, but it was on Southwark Bridge, on one of the London bridges. And they built me a stage out of straw bales. And of course, London kids had never seen straw bales before. So there was and the first year I did it, the whole set was destroyed before the end of because there was I'm not being classist here, but there were a lot of parents going, as Tarquin was wrecking it, sort of with a big smile and clapping Tarquin on as they wrecked the set. So so the second year I did it, there was I found about there was the same security lot as did a few events in Cambridge that I knew quite well, and I stood one next to me and I said, these straw bales are going to survive till 5 o'clock. And should anyone touch them, this very large gentleman here will pick you up and drop you in the Thames. And no one disbelieved, and he nodded, and no one disbelieved me. And in fact, at 5 o'clock on the dot, they all got the straw. There was this huge straw fight. But that's just one of a few things. But Chris, you just, we're coming right up to the minute here. You have just survived putting on a whole weekend online festival. Chris, work backwards. I think we've had Tarby working forwards, so we'll have you working backwards. What stuck out from this weekend, apart from you being incredibly tired right now?
Well, this weekend was more than like a live stream. It was in virtual reality, so if you had your headset on, you could see the rubbish on the floor, you could hear your feet splattering in the mud, you could see the rust on the stage, you could hang out backstage in a trailer. You could, and it took ages. Since COVID, we wanted to do like the best possible festival. The thing we did, we worked for Glastonbury Festival. We run a field called Shangri-La, and we tried to copy that into the virtual world using the maps and stuff. But, obviously, every one of you guys are thinking the same. Is like, where's the vibe? Do you know what I'm saying? So, it turned out that, if you live in virtual land, people are talking to you all the time and dancing with you, and it's just like really weird. We did all of that just now.
So, Sister Sledge, so you used to take time out occasionally to pop up to Shangri-La from the Kidz Field occasionally, I believe, where.
Yes, I'd go on a subculture safari to see our Chris, see him doing DJing. Obviously, we weren't dropping MDMA; we were dropping Ribena. And then we'd refuse to kiss anybody's that belongs to the bishop, and basically just hang out with the cool kids. You know, go down to the Rocket Lounge, hang out with the over big babies, see the art. I mean, I think what's been really underestimated, because in another world, there's an art world out there as well, and I think between Michael and people like Chris, I think there's more been done for the visual arts art world than anybody's ever given credit for, because again, people can turn up and go, I've got an idea, and they'll be given like half a dozen tickets. They'll be given somewhere to park up. They'll be given no sleep. They'll be promised no sleep, and then they can just try out a whole load of stuff, political stuff. And again, you know, if somebody writes in with a good idea, they'll be listened to. They won't have to do a 15-page application with a budget to the Arts Council. They can really take artists on the edge and bring them into something where they really understand that they can have a very wild audience. And I think that's exceptional in the cultural landscape of the UK. And
Whoa. Thank you, sister. And I'm going to bring in Tony after I brought in Kerrville, but I'm going back to Chris because you know, part of your concept, Chris, was that we should so I'm trying to be a serious presenter here. Do you mind, sister? Is that you wanted to market this festival and take acts everywhere, and you know you've taken them to Holland, and I know you've taken them to Romania. And what have you done in Romania? Talk about the Romanian festival, so Bianca can know she's not totally left out from this.
Well, Romania
event.
Romania is so full of creative young people who have brilliant ideas, and they're great at art and design and music and remixing. And, you know, even though things are quite often difficult in Romania on the government front, I'm super impressed by how the youth were so creative down that end. And how, in fact, you know, the thing we just did, even though it was a lot with California and millions of people watched, by the way, a lot of those designers weren't in Silicon Valley. They were in Timișoara in Romania, you know. So the world's gone much more global, and maybe brilliant artists living in places they usually wouldn't have something there for them. They're just brilliant, though. Brilliant. Love Romania. Love Timișoara.
And you've also brought artists from, you know, I mean, Tabi's done the same. I mean, she's. I mean, I remember the most unlikely event. You know, she's getting obscure African artists into Chelmsford, spectacular. You know, and then have to argue them through immigration, and which was always fun. You know, and you've done the same. You know, you've had a lot of gypsy stuff from Eastern Europe and DJs and all sorts of things from, you know, and that internationalism, I think, is, you know, has always been part of the festival scene, and you two have practiced it, or, you know, it's in the DNA, if you like.
Yeah, the Brexit. Hello, there's not one single festival person on the planet who agrees with Brexit. If they did, they'd be Nazis. There's nothing in all that stuff that's going on here, or to another extent what's going on in America with Trump that is culture friendly. Zero. We were already public enemy #1. We don't have to do anything.
Yeah, and we'd be most offended if we weren't. Yes, you know, so I am actually gonna come. I did tell Brenda and Michael they were going to be on soon, but I'm actually joking. But yeah, I always lie. It's what I do for a living, and yeah. So, but you know, you know, it would be neat to, and I'm probably coming back to everybody, but I would at this point, you know, we've talked about Glastonbury. I want to go back to a little bit about Continental Drifts, but right now, I kind of, since Glastonbury started, I thought, oh, me to go, and there was one year, it was back in the 80s, and I was managing a reggae band, and I was doing well. I was actually performing with it, you know, a little bit out of time, you know. White poet in front of a black reggae band, you know, back in the early 80s was probably not the most saleable item, and someone. You know, like, yeah, well, why would it be? And so and someone said, "Oh, come down. I'm running the stalls. Come down. Put the band in the van. You know, you'll get to play." And I kind of thought, do I want to drive a van load of musicians all the way to Glastonbury, get turned back at the gate, or even worse, get let in and never get a chance to play, and then have to stand there in my ear all while I'm driving back? So I didn't bother. And you know, and then I heard later they were screaming out for bands on the side stages that year, so that was a mistake, you know, but my life is full of them. And but then I'm sitting in Strawberry Fair, which is probably the last sort of free festival surviving in one day in Cambridge, and and that survived for years and years. And about 1990, I just got laid off from the Arts Centre. You know, it was another time like now where the funding was crashing down around our ears. Nothing better than that, you know, but it was. You know, we all thought, you know, like, and so a lot of people like me went back to our own people, if you like. You know, I mean, so you know, so we. You know, we'd phone up there, or Tarby, I'd be sitting at Tarby's, and Tarby said, "It's a pity you don't do storytelling. If you were a storyteller, I could give you some money." So I said, "As it happens, Tarby, that's what I do." And I decided at that moment, well, it had been building up from a lot of direction, but that was the final push to get me in. There's nothing like the chance to earn a living off what you do, and. So and likewise, I'm sitting at so that the sort of year when I was getting all that building up that side of my existence, I'm sitting in Strawberry Fair, and I'm sitting around with Tony Cordy. Hello, Tony.
Hey!
And I say, it's disgusting. An old hippie like me has never been to Glastonbury. He says, well, as it happens, I'm running Green Kids this year. You can have a couple of tickets and 25 quid diesel. So I said, that'll do. And, you know, and I couldn't even give away the second ticket. Imagine that, not being able to give away a Glastonbury ticket. And I think I flogged it at sort of cost to, you know, for a few quid to a hitchhiker on the way down for some extra diesel. And there was and then in a couple of years, and then I did some stuff for some other people that were running the Kidz Field there, remain nameless, and and then about 2 years later, I got this phone call from Tony saying, these nameless people have dropped out, have left Michael in the what's-it, and it was about 6 weeks before the festival, and Michael says, would I run the Kidz Field? So, you know, the only answer to a question like that, if you're Chris or Tony or Tarby, is yes. So Tony went yes, and then hastily rang up actually, it was a lot of people off the fairs, basically, at the first year, wasn't it?
Yeah, totally. I mean, that's a whole long, weird story for me to fit that all in, because I think the first festival I probably had something to do with was Watchfield, 1975, and I took a band there called Visitor 2035, which is fucking weird now because we're quite close to 2035, and back then it was like we're never going to live that long, you know. It was astounding, and I got involved with Watchfield, and then I ended up being involved with the Festival of Fools in Amsterdam, and I came across all these crazy, weird people, amazing people. I mean, a flowering of stuff that I'd never come across before in this country, Crystal Theatre and all sorts of amazing people in the 70s. And I helped make a film about the Festival of Fools called The Fool, which I don't think's ever really seen the light of day. I think it's now housed in a museum in Tel Aviv or something. Anyway, all wild, mad stuff. And then I came back and I did this, that, and the other. And then I heard that there was a Festival of Fools in Cornwall, 1979. I heard there was this Festival of Fools in Cornwall. And I decided, I'll go down there and see if I can find any of the people that I know from the Dutch Festival of Fools. And I went down there, and it was very early in the morning, somewhere crazy. I can't remember the name of the place, on the edge of the cliff somewhere, and it was windy and blowing a gale and everything. And I walked into this tent, which happened to be Simple Simon's. And there was this character there, sort of holding forth, and he was the funniest person I've ever met in my life. It was this guy called Michael Balfour, who later got christened Ancient Hazard. And he was an amazing, he was an old, he'd been a film star, and he was a sort of really interesting character, but very, very funny. And then I met his son, Perry, and that is kind of how the Tibetan Ukrainian Mountain Troop started up. And we became the kind of main part of Stonehenge Festival. We carried Nick Turner's Pyramid Stage around, and we had we were the first people to paint up our buses. We were kind of like, I suppose we were the English version of the pranksters, because I'd read all that Ken Kesey stuff and, been into all that stuff. And we did that for years. It was wild, wild times. And then 1984, we all left the country because, Thatcher had closed everything down, and we knew we were next because we were going up the motorway at one point, and all the coppers were going to mash up the miners. They went past us. We were we did this thing. We painted all our buses all bright and colourful, and we writ Tibetan Ukrainian Mountain Troop on the back in this sort of Scarillian script. And we sort of blagged it for a long time that we were some sort of, I don't know, crazy foreign circus. And we sort of managed to avoid all the kind of, being stopped constantly and having torches up our bums and all that stuff. We managed to blag it for a whole long time. We were our motto was, when it gets weird, we get weirder. And for a long time it worked. It was amazing. And it sort of caught on as well. It got everybody else painting their vehicles up and being more colourful. And yeah, and then we went abroad, travelled around for ages, and then came back, and obviously the bean field had happened. All that had gone horribly wrong. And there wasn't really another game in town. And so I phoned Michael up and said, do you fancy us coming down and doing something? We did something right just above the railway line for a year. And then we took over what became the Greenpeace field. And for a couple of years, we were the sort of naughty corner. In fact, I seem to remember, I'm pretty sure I gave Chris vehicle passes to get the Tofu Love Frogs in. I think that was probably 89 or something like that.
Wow. Yes, true.
And then we did that up until 1992, the last year, 1992. And we ran all night and we did all sorts of crazy. I remember I booked, what's his name? The poet.
John Cooper Clarke.
No, Heath, what's his name? Not Heathcliff. It's like that. You know who I mean, Tarby. Crazy.
Heathcott Williams.
Heathcott Williams, yes. I booked him and he came on at like 1 o'clock in the morning spouting poetry. I mean, we were trying to do, people sort of blew people's heads a bit because I had that sort of influence of the Festival of Fools, which was really sort of a bit more kind of out there. And then 92, it's sort of, I don't know, I just got to that point where it was done for me. I just felt I couldn't do adults anymore. They were just too much for pay. And I'd sort of decided that, because by that time I had 3 small children, I sort of wanted to do something for children. And then 93, I had the year off. And then 6 weeks, like you said, John, 6 weeks before the festival, Michael phoned me up and said, my children's area is looking, I've looked at the aerial photos and it's really, nothing happening. Would you put something on? And I didn't want to, I had a thing about, I've used that kids thing, KIDZ, for a long time, since the 70s. And so we relaunched it as a kids field, yeah, and it's been amazing. It has been phenomenal. It's been a really brilliant thing to watch small children, you know, grow up and hit the main stages and do all that stuff. It's been really very, very fulfilling.
And you've kind of kept its you know, its principles. You've not allowed selling on the field or anything, you know. So you know, there's no way on a year like this that Orange or whatever it is, Vodafone is going to come along and sponsor. There's no way Vodafone is going to sponsor the kids field. You know, and really, you know, I mean, the nunnery's really having financial troubles of its own, because, you know, because the Vatican disowned them or excommunicated them or whatever the Vatican does, and
Long time.
So they've got no money, or also, Sister Sledge, would you have sponsored had you could?
Don't worry, love. We're pimping out old videos, and I'd never pimp out anything that Tony does, obviously. You know, we're fine actually. We're all right, you know, because you know we live on Ribena and hope.
So we come, yeah. So and it's grown like Topsy, hasn't it? You know, from that, you know, like you know, having put this ludicrous thing together in 6 weeks, which would have had Old Hazard. Chris, you've got to put you want to jump in, unmute yourself.
I had to explain to Brenda what Ribena is.
Right. So, coming back to yeah. What were you going to say, Chris? You know, it's like being in class. Chris had his hand up.
I didn't actually, John. I didn't. I was picking my nose like this.
Oh, that's all right then. Yeah.
Brenda, it's Red Bull, not Ribena, if I'm honest.
Anyway, so.
Well, I want to interject there slightly, John.
Please do.
I definitely, because I think, you know, this whole thing about money is, I think for real artists, money is a really secondary thing. I mean, obviously we all need to put, you know, we need to put something in the tank and we need to sort of pay our bills and all the rest of it. But I don't think, you know, everybody that I know, I can see here, I don't think the money has ever been the main objective. I think putting on a show and doing something and being creative, that's the main objective. And it's always been a little bit, the second thought is, how are we going to actually afford all this? Or now we've got the bills, we have to pay it. It's sort of, you know, money is important, but it's not the primary objective.
It's not as important as food tickets.
Well, and back in the early days, I know I came in when someone was talking about Sid and all that. You know, there was free food kitchens. You know, we used to sort of, you know, pass around the hat, or someone would sort of, you know, cook up a pot of some strange dal or something. You know, it's so, I think the money, you know, obviously now festivals and that whole thing has become this massive industry. It's an industry now, for Christ's sake. Which is just astounding for us that did those very early festivals where there wasn't, you know, you're lucky if there was a trend, you know, there was so it is quite, I feel like the most important thing is the creative side of things. And actually, you know, the rewards come, you know, they come regardless. It's not like the primary objective. And I think that's probably why a lot of the modern festivals are so soulless, because the money has become the primary objective. And, you know, it's just, I don't think it is for...
I think the primary objective, I mean, not the primary objective, but, you know, I think a round of applause on that one. And that is not an excuse for no one to pay us, okay?
Right, absolutely.
You know,
I hear you loud and clear.
So, I wasn't talking about you, the people here. I was talking about anyone who might be listening. I've always been looked after very well by everyone here. But the oh, sorry. But I think, part of that rewards is that when the Kids Field opens now, and we open that gate on a Thursday, it takes 20 minutes for that crowd to get through into the Kids Field. And, it's become, and we've got, and there's people come and do us for, people like Dynamo that come and perform for fun on it just because they love doing it. And the little rewards are the parents that come up to you. I remember the other year there was someone came up and they remember things from one year to the next. When I was introducing Dynamo one year, because the first year it was in my little storytelling tent, and so we couldn't allow adults in. So I got every child shouting, "Adults go away, adults go away," and they all left, and there was one guy who wouldn't go. And so I said, "Now, children, we're going to learn the difference between the plural and the singular." And it's adult go, and I got this poor guy. Anyway, so, and then when we moved to the big top, it was kind of we let the adults in, but they had to stand at the back. And there's a guy from CBeebies that we were working with, and we moved them back, and this guy was sitting there with a baby on his lap in the middle, and I pointed to him and I said, "Except for you." But he thought I was going to try and move him. A year later, he came up to me as he was walking past our camping area and thanked me for that moment. And there's and it is full of moments. I think that is, that's what we do at festivals. We create moments for people. Yes, sister.
I just wanted to say that I was introduced in my first year. I was navigated around with an amazing fairy called Dot. And I think, we couldn't have a meeting like this without mentioning Dot. And she was this magical fairy that I think knew Tony quite well. And I think that without Dot, I wouldn't have orientated through the magic at Glastonbury. So I just wanted to name one of the luminaries that's since passed on into the fairy world, but we know and love her. And I just wanted to remind everybody about Dot.
Thank you, sister. Now I'm going to move across the Atlantic because the first time I went to the States was when I didn't go. I went to Texas actually, and then I was taken out to and people told me about this festival, Kerrville, that and it's kind of difficult to imagine here. It runs for 3 weeks because the people that run the festival own the ground and nothing happens there. They call it an RV park, but they're lying, of course. All the RV bit is the hippies that won't move on at the end of the festival. And it's an extraordinary place. And 1/3 of our crew there, and of course Gail Ross does the storytelling, but 1/3 of the crew are performers. So I go on the breakfast shift because it's really it's really hot there most of the time, and breakfast shift finishes at 11, and then but the main stage, and it's kind of, it links almost back to the fairs in the way it runs. The main stage is almost incidental. There's the main stage is the excuse for the campfire circles, because they can be, because it's Texas, they can be, and which are all singer-songwriters and singers, and people sing. Like from 24 hours a day, there's stuff going on. And occasionally people pop across the main stage, but more relevant, people from the main stage go to the campfire circles. And there's no star thing going on. That of course there will be internal politics like there are in all festivals, but in general, compared, like there's no one being flown in by helicopter and then disappearing at the end of their gig. And there's and it has and as you get there, instead of people saying where's your ticket, they go welcome home. and that's which for me, and just that it was, and amongst the people that introduced me, that who also came to Glastonbury to the Kidz Field years and years ago back in the 90s was and then just and then we blagged gigs for her in the bar, in the performance bar, in the on the theatre field, and then the backstage bar of acoustic, and played round that. But the person who introduced me to Kerrville was Brenda Freed, and later and there she met and I won't spoil the story, but then next to her is her husband, Michael Diaz, and who became now I'm always doing this. I hit. Oh, that's it. And you became well. I'll interview you about that later. Brenda, do you want to tell us how you got to Kerrville? You got to Kerrville in the first place?
Yeah, sure. So I am originally from Iowa in the center of the U.S. and I took off with a man called Bob Clark, and he was a poet and songwriter, and we rode our bicycles. We pedaled across Iowa and then went north and went up into Canada, and he had a daughter up there who is now my daughter and our daughter, and her children are our grandchildren. But anyway, so we went up to see her in Northern Ontario, and then we went and dropped back down. We were going to stay in Canada, but it was too expensive for our budget, so we dropped back down and followed the St. Lawrence Seaway and went up through New England, and then we took a ferry to Nova Scotia, and then we came back and went all down the East Coast and island hopped with our bicycles. And while we were on the trip, we came across all these dead animals and stuff and visited some Indian reservations, and I made jewelry as a kid, and so we started making jewelry and selling it. Then we had more of a budget, so that was kind of nice because people were buying the jewelry that we were making from porcupine quills and stuff. And it was quite a creative trip. And then we went all the way down to Florida, and then our goal was to do the perimeter of the U.S. And when we got to Texas, we went to Luckenbach, and we had the guitar with us because Bob was pulling it on a trailer, and we would get the guitar out, and people said, you need to come to Kerrville, which was like 40 minutes away. They said, because there's a big festival and this is a work weekend. And so they kind of hauled us over there, and that's how I was introduced to the Kerrville Folk Festival. And then we decided we would stay around Texas and be on staff because it was a 3-weekend festival, in 2 weeks. And so we we worked for an organic vegetable farmer we had met when we went through this one town, and waited out the 3 weeks. And then we went to the festival and stayed for the 3 weekends and worked on staff, and then played in the staff concert. And that's basically was a life-changing experience for me, because we decided to settle in Texas then because we were looking for a place to live. So we settled in Texas in the Hill Country, and then the Austin International Poetry Festival happened, and John came over, and because Bob was a poet, then we met John, and he came out and stayed with us, and that was a wonderful experience. And then so the Kerrville Folk Festival is like a marker in my life because Bob and I ended up there, and then basically our marriage fell apart there, like several years later, and then and then there in between that I would come to England, and John and I went on tour, and one of the most really incredible experiences I've ever had was touring around with John, and we went, between my gigs and festivals, I was introduced to all these people, and it was so much fun. I have this corner of this bulletin board in my room, and it has all this, my favorite things from John and John Rose family and stuff. And then met Bob, or I met Michael at the Kerrville Folk Festival. And
You should never call your husband your ex-husband's name.
he's so used to this story that, it's just kind of part of life. It's part of my story. But anyway, so
Have some more scotch, dude.
yeah, right. So then Michael became like the executive director of the Kerrville Folk Festival.
Not the executive director, thankfully.
Well, he became
Chairman.
the chairman of the Kerrville Folk Festival.
So I didn't have to do anything. I just.
Okay, so the festival is a huge part of our life together, and this is our camp behind. That's a picture of our camp.
It is your camp. Don't give it away. And so you've got a song, haven't you, about your meeting there and all that sort of thing. So we've had a lot of chat. So let's have a bit of music, I think. Let's.
Okay, so this is a song about how I met Michael at the Kerrville Folk Festival. He got out of that truck. She was sitting with a friend. He didn't notice her, but her heart jumped for him. Later under the stars, she said, I think we've met. He said, we sang a song together once, and then she remembered when they talked till they'd said enough of good times and the tough. And when you put all the pieces together, it's the picture of love. Cooking is his forte. She likes to consume. He likes the sunrise. She loves the moon. When life is a mystery, she has the clues. He solves the puzzle and others confused. She gives him a hint and he gives her a show. When you put all the pieces together, it's the picture of love. He's known as a planner. She acts on the spot. He likes things in order and remembers what she forgot. He lights her fire and says she floats his boat. He trips her trigger, oh, need I say more? That's all she wrote. The time they're together, there can be no doubt. And when you put all the pieces together, it's the picture of love. Picture of love. Picture of
Oh,
So then when John came and he came to the festival, and then Sandra and Lee came over and they came to the festival.
We had the sister.
The sister. It was a good time. Lots of really great memories, lots of great experiences, and John is like my brother. I love him.
So
Well, thank you for that. And I think that song, you know, is kind of like you know, if there's one thing festivals do, we do love really well, and you know, whether it's huge art with their big love sign and or and their big murals down on the Kidz Field, and then up on their stuff up in Shangri-La, or just people falling in love with each other. And now I'm gonna come. I might come back for a song like "Don't Go Away, Don't Leave the Campsite." And I'm coming. We've been joined by the wonderful Anna Mudeka from far away. No, we're back into East Anglia. We've dropped back into. We started in East Anglia, Suffolk, but we're going to cross. We're going to go north of the Waveney, up to Norfolk. And Anna, you run this. And I should have performed there for the first time this year.
Yes.
You know, we've done loads of stuff on different fields. So on kids stuff, on what was the you know, the Norfolk One World festivals and stuff, which was but you've got your own festival. Tell us about it.
I run Norfolk World Music Festival, which is set in the Breckland area of Norfolk. It's a small festival, 500 max, and it's families, world foods, music, culture. Just one place, you know, in the heart of Norfolk, where people of all nationalities gather for 1 weekend a year. And we have a great time.
So and of course, I mean, what actually made you start that? Because you're an artist of your own right, and have been for, you know, a very respected artist for a lot of years now. So what made you want to go into the ludicrous bit of being a festival organizer?
I had babies.
All right, that'll do it.
I wanted to work from home, and I thought, you know, what's a better way to kind of combine being at home with the kids? So I started the festival, but on the back of it, it is a fundraiser that I do for orphans in Zimbabwe. So I send orphans to school. At the moment, I've got about 47, but it kind of goes up to about 60, sometimes 70. So it fluctuates depending on their situation. So kind of, I mean, they say that charity begins at home. And what I wanted to create was something really unusual for Norfolk, which is kind of world music. And on the back of that, I wanted to help children go to school in Zimbabwe. So it's kind of worked side by side really well, but COVID is hit both areas very, very hard, obviously. And we're just having to restructure and find a way how we can move forward after this year.
Whoa. Now, well, Betsy, hopefully, well, we might come to we might close the program on a moving forward discussion. But right now, Anna, you know, I've mentioned you're an artist, singer, drummer. Would you do this the honor of doing us a song?
You'd
Dropping
like
you in it straight away.
I wondered what you were going to ask me. In that case, I'm going to show you the instrument I play. This is called a nyunga nyunga, and it's from Zimbabwe. It comes from my people, actually. It comes from the Eastern Highlands of Zimbabwe. But it was made very, very famous by an amazing young singer, well, similar age to myself. So she would have been 44 as well this year. So she made this instrument famous all over the world. Her name was Chione Somaraire. I've been playing this for a while. I will hopefully play another song, and I'll show you another different instrument, which I play as well. So I want to play a song here, which I've been learning in lockdown. And I think we've all kind of find a way of challenging ourselves to either learn new tricks or new things, or do a bit of gardening, catch up with all those jobs that we've been meaning to do. So this is called Shuramatongo. And Shuramatongo in my language in Shona means pandemic. So the piece of music is a traditional piece of music called Vanava no Gwara. We have the same music traditionally as Mozart and Beethoven's, but so this specific one is called Vanava no Gwara. But I'm gonna use improvisation to lyrics on the word Shuramatongo, pandemic. Shuramatongo, 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 Wabanabio. Shuramatongo, 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 Wabanabi.
Oh,
It's still working.
Oh, thank you. Nice.
beautiful.
Thank you.
Sister Sledge, you'd like to speak?
I just want to say that that was incredible, and that I was very lucky to sing with Stella Tishewe quite a few years ago. Many years ago, Stella Tishewe came to Cardiff and did a big project, and that kind of gave me an echo of love. So thank you very much.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Asante Sana.
Oh, thank you very much, Tatenda. What an opportunity to work with Stella.
She was running workshops, and she was not in a happy place actually. So it's a long story that I need to do with you out of makeup.
Wonderful. I look forward to it. I so look forward to it.
Just to let you know that I work with a company in Birmingham called Celebrating Sanctuary, which is about working with people that are recently arrived, giving them tools, getting them into schools, giving them platforming events, running projects. And
I know them.
We need to get a chat with you because we've got a venue in Birmingham called The Edge, and you need to come and play for sure. And,
that sounds amazing.
To get the spirit of Stella out there and the next generation playing versions of Indira.
She's inspired us as women in Zimbabwe to actually champion this instrument. You know, it's such a male-dominated instrument. And when we saw Stella doing it, and she's still doing it, it's inspired so many generations to pick up the mbira and actually challenge the norm, you know, because usually it's men who play the instrument. So yeah.
She totally broke the rules. And this woman could like take some snuff and leap 6 foot in the air. She was incredible.
She's quite tall as well, isn't she? Amazing.
So we at another point at another magazine we'll bring the other version of Sister Sledge back, and maybe talk about arts venues and where they're going and what we can do in the future. Right now, I want us to actually think into the future a little bit, but you know, I mean, hopes, you know, we've always been optimists. You know, if we weren't optimists, we wouldn't have done this nonsense for all these years. So yes. What is it? Selena Godin, you know, with a brilliant poem, "Pessimism is for lightweights." And there's, so Tony, what's what we won't call it the new normal, the better normal. What's how do you see things working out?
Well, you know, like I said earlier on, it's a sort of real strange thing that how festivals have gone from this, you know, the original, you know, as I start, you know, when I started out in the sort of 70s, just in the end of the 60s and the 70s, and you went to a festival and it was just a gathering of people that came. Nobody was selling anything. And, you know, if you wanted anything, you had to bump start somebody's car and drive to the nearest pub. And it's gone from that to an astounding industry of, you know, an amazing thing. I mean, you go to somewhere like Boomtown, which is, I would think, is probably at the forefront of, you know, where things are evolving to. And then all the little folk festivals. I mean, it's definitely going somewhere. My joy is that I've gone from that, and I now run, you know, definitely Europe's largest free children's festival. And so I see these tiny, tiny children go from my fields to the pyramid stages. You know, we've had kids, you know, because we run a music academy in the Kidz Field, and we give away guitars and musical instruments to kids that show promise. And we've seen kids from there, you know, from the sandpit. I see their parents get together, come back a year later with a small child, that small child, you know, scrubbing about in a sandpit, and then they're in the music academy learning a few chords or learning how to plate spin or something, and then they're running a field somewhere, then they're running their own festivals. And it's definitely, it's moving on. It's that, you know, it's the prophet. It's that whole thing of, you know, you fire the arrow, but you have no knowledge of how far that arrow is going to go. And definitely festivals are going to carry on. People are always going to want to meet after this nonsense. You know, we will all get together somewhere, and because people want to be together. You know, the human tribe is so strong.
And what's been amazing through this is because we've been forced to, we've been doing so much stuff online. What I've noticed just with the World Storytelling Cafe is that it's the opportunity to work across continents.
Yes, it is.
Sometimes we'd have people from, well, just looking at people who we've got here, we've got Texas, we've got Morocco, we've got Romania. We're all across.
We've got Wales. We've got Wales, John.
Wales. I was going to get to that. I was getting to Wales. I wasn't forgetting you. And we've got Norfolk, Zimbabwe, Norfolk. And
John, remember our Texland idea? We were going to do this exchange, you know, from Texas to England, and we can do it virtually now.
Yeah, so and I know with the cafe we're talking, and Bianca will know more about this. We're actually talking about because this whole idea of this place came from the fact that the person who's wanted to open a storytelling centre in Marrakesh, Mike, who's got Riyadh's down there, and I was going down to help them at the end of the year, and then he came and said we're in lockdown there, so. We want to do it online, and what we're talking about doing it in future, you know, even when it gets going physically, is having a big screen in the storytelling centre, so we have both live storytelling and what we've found in this you know, so we've all got this new, you know, it's created a whole new thing that we can use. So you know, so maybe the future is combinations, and I don't know how you do that.
Well, it's going to be a combination, John. It definitely needs to be a combination because this is wonderful, but it's not a substitute.
You can't smell it.
But you can't substitute that thing of actually all being together in a field. You know, that wonder of actually being physically close. And I hope we don't end up just like this in our bunkers forever.
No, we're not going to allow that. You know,
that would be very sad.
Even if we have to find a COVID-free island somewhere,
yeah,
that
really,
we can all meet on.
Yeah, John, what I was going to say is, you know, we being in America, and Bianca mentioned this earlier, how hard it's been for artists to come over here, even if you're not being paid. If you just come to an event where people are being paid, you know, particularly in these times, but even before now, you could show up at the border, and if you carried your guitar, you could get sent home. Even going to England, actually, you know, and I haven't had that problem, but it's a real challenge. This year, our harmonica festival, we're not having it because 500 old people playing harmonicas in a hotel room is not a good idea. But we're going to do it online, and we've got performers, not that old, only 60 or 70, or not. Some of them are 90.
This is a youth program.
Well, we have kids. That's true, but we're putting it on virtually, August 12th through 16th, and I've got a lady from who just agreed to come in from Amsterdam. I've got one of the best chromatic players from Madrid playing. I've got Steve Baker, who's a Brit living in Hamburg, playing. I've got two guys from Sweden, and we can pay them because I'm buying their video. I'm not paying them as humans. So I can give them money for that. I just can't pay them as employees, and it's really stupid because I end up with something similar. Of course, what we can't do is play along with each other. I mean, unfortunately, we can't play along with that amazing instrument because if we did, it would, you know, the timing would all be wrong. So we're gonna. But I'm retired from the high tech community, and we will figure out how to allow that to happen. This is Zoom was the right thing at the right time, and those guys are the luckiest startup they've ever been. But somebody will figure out how to make all the sound thing work together. But until then, you know, you've got backing tracks and you can sort of pass them around and put together a composite. But it is going to be an amazing tool when we get back together next year in Charlotte, when hopefully we'll be face to face again. I agree with you. I'm going to have a big old screen up there with a bunch of Zoom stuff, and we'll have cameras, and we'll bring in the international artist. And
yeah, it's that, you know, and just for small festivals, you know, I mean, Anna, you've got a budget of nil, and there's not quite nil, but getting close, and but it means so you could never fly anyone in, you know.
So this year we were going to fly somebody in for the first time, and it was almost like the big event. Sister Sledge, we were going to bring your woman. She was going to be our headline this year. So we're still in talks. Hopefully. But what you then realize is the day you finish this year's festival, you're organizing next year again. I wasn't quite prepared for that when I first started. You know, I thought, I'll start in March, run the festival in July, have the rest of my life. But no, it takes over. But what Tony is saying as well, watching the children grow. I mean, that is where it's at for me too. You know, kind of. First year they come and then they're toddling and then they're walking. So we have an open mic evening on a Friday. and you get the drunken dads. And then last year you started seeing the younger children, you know, they go away and they learn an instrument for the whole year so that they can come and do open mic. And it's brilliant. It's just, yeah, I don't think festivals will ever stop because, you know.
Oh no, well, they've been going since the beginning of time. And you know, I mean, people like Mark over there and myself, you know, we're, you know, as the entertainers, you know, we've got it easy, really. You know, the people that do all the work, you know, are people like Tony and Chris and Tabi up there and Anna. So, you know, so Mark, just you and I think a round of applause for all those people. You know, otherwise, you know, we'd have nowhere to go. You know, we'd have to go and work or something. So bless you. Now, what I'm going to do, I'm going to. I mean, we could probably carry this conversation until midnight, but it's 2 hours ahead of us in Romania at the moment. So, you know, like, Bianca needs some sleep sometime. I try and wreck her life, but so what I'm going to do, you know, it's a festival, so let's finish on a couple of songs. So we'll have one more from Michael and Brenda, and then we'll finish up with another piece from Anna, if that's okay with are you okay with that, Anna?
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. And what? Hold on. Mark wants to say something. Hold on. Unmute yourself, Mark. Unmute.
I think he has a problem with his microphone.
Okay. Oh, you're going to have to go. Right. Bye-bye, Mark. Glad you could join us. Glad I didn't interview you if you're on silent, because I can't lip read. Right. Okay. So, and Tony, you recognise Mark there.
I did, yes.
Yeah, they're normally walking around with a bird on his head or something. So Michael and Brenda, are you with us for a last song?
Yeah.
News is breaking me. Can't stand to sit and watch
songs and then they're done.
I want to hear what I need to know. Too many voices, too many shows. People divided and on the attack. Head spinning over what's fiction or fact. Feeling low on trust, high on doubt. Losing faith in what we're all about. I'm always thinking, what can I do? I'm only one person in one pair of shoes. What I really know inside is that it's up to me instead of feeling confused. It's courage I need. One woman refused the back of the bus. One person changed the world. One person can change the world. Progress comes, change is hard. Along the way, we all get scarred. Children suffer while we hold our debate. We're all spun up between love and hate. You might be thinking, what can you do? The hand you were dealt feels unfair to you. What I really want to say is that it's up to you. Instead of feeling defeated, find something to do. One woman refused the back of the bus. One person changed the world. One person can change the world. what can we do? It's never too late to make our very first move. What I really want to say is that it's up to us instead of feeling discouraged. Let's all be fearless. One woman refused the back of the bus. One person changed the world. One person can change the world. One person can change the world. One person can change the world. So here's to all the world changers out there.
Whoa. That's brilliant. That's brilliant. And I'm going to finish. Thank you all. Thank you all. Thank you, Sister Sledge. Don't go yet, but thank you. And thank you, Tarby and Liam and Tarby's techie, Liam and Sarah. Have you been techieing as well, Sarah? No. That were both the Sarahs then.
Oh, beautiful woman! I didn't know she's there. Hi, Sarah.
So, thank you, everyone.
Right, but right now.
Hi, Anna. Nice to see you.
Oh, Sarah helped me set up the festival. Amazing.
Long time.
Oh, I can't believe it. Big hug. Oh,
I'm back.
Thank you.
Hey, I'm back in Norfolk, Anna. We should get in touch and go for a drink.
I love that so much. Of course. So good to see you. Wow, that's made my day.
Well, Anna. Well, anyone who actually, before Anna plays that does our final song and I do all the goodbyes and all that stuff, Anna is going to be on here again with her own 3/4 an hour, just Anna Mudeka in her own right on Saturday, August the 8th. Yes. So we've both got the same date. That's always very useful. So Anna, do you want to play us out? Well, not play us out, but do a final music song, and the space is yours.
I shall leave the rest until we meet again. But I'm gonna be playing Bundura this time, and the song I'm playing is a song I learned from a dear brother of mine, Chatwo Lutiro. Some of you might have come across Chatwo. He was an amazing teacher, mentor, artist. Sadly, he left us last year in June. So this is a song that I learned from him, and I want to dedicate it to him. Sometimes I can feel his presence when I play this song. So I'm hoping he's here with us. But it's a song about eating good food. And I don't know if you've eaten or you haven't eaten yet, but I certainly had nice food today. I decided to have a Zimbabwean food, and it was very delicious. Oh, maybe you can join me a little bit. We call it it's manja, the type of clapping we do, and it just goes like this. Ba, 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 ba. That's it. So clapping along, and you can go. Touch God, touch God, touch God, touch highway, touch highway, touch highway, touch highway, touch God, touch God, touch God, touch God, touch God.
Oh,
Oh, mwah. Beautiful.
fantastic.
Thank you so much
Now,
for the opportunity.
oh, I need to thank you, everybody. And, you know, I mean, I know the BBC and ITV make documentaries on festivals, but I'd like to think all of you have made it possible to a proper bit of archive here that's really got into the soul of fairs and festivals. So thank you, Tony. Thank you, Sister
Welcome, John.
Sledge. Thank you, Sarah's. Thank you, Tabi. And Anna and Bianca and Chris who's gone, and everyone who's been here and gone. But we've had a wonderful time tonight. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Fantastic to see you all.
Come to the campfire.
Bye. Thank you, Bianca.
Thank you.
Good to see you, Toby.
Where is
Yeah,
that?
lovely to see you, Darby. Mucho love to everybody.
Lots of love.
Thank you. Thank you.
Oh, and Sister Sledge, of course, which I forgot. Oh, I'll never get to heaven now.
All right, John, you weren't going there anyway.
Okay.
Not with Sister Sledge anyway, that's for sure.
Okay, bye everyone.
Bye,
Bye, John.
Bye. Loved it.
Bye.
Bye, bye.
Bye.
Bye.